My Lords, there's been some excellent speeches on this discussion. I speak the day after the rather misnamed Freedom Day was used by the Prime Minister to herald a Show Your Papers society. No doubt the threat of domestic passports, a policy that the Minister for Vaccines has regularly described as discriminatory, is just a ploy to nudge or blackmail young people to get vaccinated or be denied access to nightclubs and public life. But today I'm here to speak against another illiberal measure against mandated vaccines for care workers. That message is get vaccinated or you'll be denied access to your job. And so I really want to ask the Minister, have the government abandoned using the usual democratic means of persuasion, convincing citizens of the merits of policies, and are instead resorting to a lazier, coercive approach and bypassing Parliament while they're at it? The government claims that it's tried extensive communication programmes to try and persuade care workers to get jabbed. But how hard have they tried? And I think the Unison union suggestions were very helpful. We've heard from Baronesses Noakes and Bennett some other ways that you could have targeted persuasion, peer-to-peer reassurance initiatives, and so on. I just don't believe that we've tried hard enough. We all understand that vaccine hesitancy amongst care workers is a moral dilemma. Ideally, those who work with vulnerable people should not put them in danger, and it would be better if they were immunised. As my mother lived in a care home and my aunt is still a resident, I'm sensitive to the idea that in certain protective environments, following health and safety rules is key to the job. And if care workers who have intimate contact with our loved ones refuse to wear PPE, for example, we might think them negligent. So I can see both sides. But can the Minister concede that this is an ethical minefield? But this legislation is a blunt instrument that doesn't take into account any nuance at all. Ministers say that the policy is based on consultation, and they claim that they've listened to the experiences, concerns of providers and people living and working in care homes. But have they really listened? Because actually a majority of the consultation respondents did not support mandated vaccines, and 62% of care home residents themselves are unsupportive of the proposal. The consultation is credited with the extraordinary decision to broaden the scope to include, with limited exemptions, everyone who enters a care home, regardless of their role. Can the Minister explain how does the driver who regularly delivers food, should they be sacked too? What about the hairdressers and the arts and crafts teachers who went into my mum's home, who service homes? Will they be banned? Will there be bouncers at the door? Will homes have less services? And then there's the unintended consequences. A recent study by the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine was very clear that COVID-19 vaccines should remain voluntary for care workers or risk negatively affecting relationships at work, hardening stances against the vaccine and undermining the trust in all vaccines and in the process of policy making. Let me be clear, I'm an enthusiastic supporter of vaccination. The 18th century Edward Jenner is one of my personal heroes. Specifically, COVID vaccines are proof that humanity can deploy scientific ingenuity in managing and overcoming deadly challenges. I have no time for the anti-big pharma tropes or the rejection of pharmacological interventions. Nature does not know best. But I also believe in freedom, and specifically freedom of choice and conscience. And surely it's dangerous and regressive to weaponise medical interventions as the price of freedom. Ever since trade unions and radicals forced the repeal of the 1886 Contagious Diseases Act, the voluntary principle of opting out has worked well. And at the very least, overturning that principle in law should require far more scrutiny than a rush-through statutory instrument given only 90 minutes in debate. And I thank the Baroness Wheeler for forcing us to at least have 90 debate here today, but it's not the way it should be done. The government insisted that this was necessary, however, to protect vulnerable residents, and that might be more convincing if so many vulnerable people hadn't died of COVID in care homes due to actually government policies that weren't debated. All right, that was an emergency, but more recently, many of the same vulnerable residents, their welfare has been jeopardised by draconian restrictions on visits from families. And I commend all my noble lords to read Midsummer Milestones, a briefing paper from John's campaign and supporters of rights for residents, to get a visceral sense of the horrors inflicted on those in care homes by the imposed mandatory 14-day isolation rules. The protective ring around care homes really does ring hollow. And now the everyday heroes of care homes who worked their guts out during the pandemic feel victimised, and I've received droves of emails from frontline staff who say they feel like third-class citizens. Finally, and ironically, this policy could make care homes less safe in the future. We've already heard that if only 5% of staff refuse the vaccine and are sacked, that will mean tens of thousands of workers leaving a sector that's already got severe staff shortages. Does the Minister think homes should operate with dangerously low staffing levels or close down? Many professionals believe that mandated vaccine policy will see them close altogether with a loss of 50,000 beds. Does the Minister realise that that would mean residents ending up in hospitals, increasing pressure on the NHS? Oh, the irony. This SI is not serious policy. I will abstain because the regret is not strong enough for how I feel. But I do think the issue requires proper, nuanced, moral argument in this House.